What if I told you there are places on Earth so filthy, so shockingly contaminated that they could kill you in days? And people still live there. From rivers of poison to air thick with deadly toxins, you're about to see the dirtiest places humans call home. Get your stomach ready, because what's coming will leave you in absolute shock.
Number 14, Afghanistan. Afghanistan shows what happens when decades of warfare combine with complete infrastructure collapse to create contamination scenarios that seem impossible to survive. Kabul, the capital, struggles with pollution levels that make breathing a daily health hazard, while families navigate through landscapes poisoned by conflict. Military operations have left Afghanistan's soil contaminated with depleted uranium, unexploded ordnance, and chemical residues from decades of bombing campaigns. Agricultural areas that should feed the population instead grow crops in soil poisoned by warfare. Farmers have no choice but to cultivate contaminated land because alternative farmland doesn't exist in a country where most territory remains unsafe due to ongoing conflict. Water systems throughout Afghanistan carry contamination from multiple sources simultaneously. Chemical weapons used during various conflicts leached into groundwater supplies. Military bases dumped fuel, oil, and toxic waste directly into soil without containment systems. Abandoned ammunition depots leaked heavy metals and explosive residues into water sources that entire communities depend on for survival.
Number 13, Bangladesh. Think India would take the #1 spot? Think again. The real champion of visible filth worldwide is Bangladesh, a country where life pulses through absolute chaos and dirt has completely taken over streets, rivers, and the daily routine of millions of people. Bangladesh ranks as the 8th most populated planet on Earth and also the most densely inhabited territory. With a relatively small surface area of around 148,000 square kilometers and over 170 million inhabitants, population density exceeds 1,100 people per square kilometer. Just to give you perspective, Bangladesh is almost the same size as Nepal, but with 6 times more population. It's literally one of the most saturated places on the planet. What's the result of all this? An urban explosion completely out of control, where basic infrastructure simply can't keep up. The country becomes a maze of narrow alleys, overcrowded markets, collapsed slum neighborhoods, and channels completely blocked with tons of garbage. The capital, Dhaka, gets considered one of the most contaminated cities worldwide. The air becomes almost impossible to breathe, loaded with dust, smoke from burning trash, and toxic gases coming from underground factories.
I have a question for you. First, I would like to say that it is possible to follow the greatest curiosities of our world every day. But to do so, you need to be subscribed to our channel. So, are you already subscribed? If not, take the opportunity to subscribe now. Also, take the opportunity to like the video, so YouTube will recommend more videos from our channel. So leave your like right now. And now that you have done that, let's go!
Number 12, Haiti. Haiti shatters every romantic notion about Caribbean island life. This country proves that tropical weather and beautiful coastlines mean nothing when human systems completely break down. Port-au-Prince, the capital, has transformed into an urban nightmare where garbage rivers flow through neighborhoods and basic sanitation exists only in distant memory. The 2010 earthquake didn't just destroy buildings, it obliterated Haiti's already fragile infrastructure. Over a decade later, the country still hasn't recovered. Instead, it has adapted to living in permanent crisis mode. Entire neighborhoods built from earthquake rubble and garbage create a landscape that looks more like war zones than residential areas. Families construct homes using materials salvaged from dumps, creating structures that offer no protection from contamination. Street food in Haiti becomes Russian roulette with your digestive system. Vendors prepare meals using water collected from contaminated sources, often mixing it with whatever liquid they can find. Popular dishes like griot, fried pork, and akra, fried dough, get prepared in oil reused countless times, creating toxic combinations that guarantee stomach problems for anyone brave enough to try them.
Number 11, India. If Bangladesh is the world's dirtiest country, India undoubtedly stands as its closest rival. Here, filth isn't just consequence of poverty, it gets mixed with routine, with culture, and even with faith of people who've learned to coexist with garbage as part of the landscape. India gets known worldwide for its deep spirituality, majestic temples, and millennial culture. But just stepping out of the airport and putting one foot on the street confronts you with shocking reality. Garbage everywhere, sacred rivers converted into drains, cows wandering through garbage mountains, human feces on sidewalks, and crowds walking between rubble and waste. That's the urban portrait of many Indian cities. Maybe what you'll remember most about India is its food, and it's no wonder. Streets overflow with stands selling aromatic, colorful, exotic dishes full of spices that attract through curiosity and later through stomach pain. In many of these stands, foods get prepared with dirty hands, without washing utensils properly, and without any protection against insects. It's common seeing flies covering dishes, people coughing over food, or washing dishes with dark water taken from buckets thrown on the ground. The situation becomes so critical that travelers have a popular term to describe it: deli belly, or deli stomach, an intestinal infection almost guaranteed for whoever dares try the country's street food. Diarrhea, vomiting, and dehydration sadly become part of the gastronomic tour. And the most curious and disgusting thing is that in many places, mice walk freely between stands and pots, and nobody seems to care. For many devoted Hindus, mice get considered sacred animals associated with God Ganesha, and therefore must be respected. In temples, like the famous Karni Mata, mice get fed milk and rice as part of devotion. That reverence goes beyond temples.
Number 10. Madagascar. Madagascar might sound exotic and beautiful, but step into Antananarivo's streets and you'll discover an island nation drowning in its own waste. This African island country combines extreme poverty, failed governance, and environmental destruction to create living conditions that shock even experienced travelers. The capital city becomes a maze of open sewers, garbage mountains, and improvised markets where hygiene doesn't exist. Vendors sell food directly from the ground, often placing fruits, vegetables, and cooked meals on surfaces covered with animal feces and decomposing organic matter. The famous Malagasy rice dishes get prepared using water from contaminated sources, ensuring that every meal carries potential for serious illness. Antananarivo's hills create natural drainage that should carry rainwater to the ocean. Instead, these channels have transformed into garbage rivers, carrying human waste, dead animals, and toxic runoff through neighborhoods. Families live directly alongside these contaminated waterways, using the same water for cooking, cleaning, and sometimes drinking when they have no alternatives.
Number 9. Democratic Republic of Congo. Congo throws you straight into a nightmare, where the ground literally bleeds poison. This massive African nation sits on top of the world's richest mineral deposits. But those same resources have turned entire regions into toxic wastelands that make other contaminated places look like five-star resorts. Cobalt mining operations have transformed eastern Congo into an environmental disaster zone. These minerals power your smartphone, your laptop, your electric car, basically every piece of modern technology you touch daily. But here's the twisted part. They get extracted by hand in conditions so toxic that workers die within years of exposure. Children as young as 7 crawl into narrow mine shafts, breathing dust that contains radioactive elements and heavy metals that destroy their nervous systems. Kinshasa, the capital, houses over 15 million people in conditions that defy human endurance. The city produces over 9,000 tons of garbage daily, but collects less than 20% of it. The rest piles up in neighborhoods, creating mountains of waste that stretch for miles.
Number 8. South Sudan. South Sudan gained independence in 2011, making it the world's newest country, but it inherited problems older than most civilizations. Juba, the capital, struggles with contamination issues that make other African cities look pristine by comparison. This nation proves that political independence means nothing without basic infrastructure and governance systems. Oil extraction has poisoned large areas of South Sudan's territory, creating environmental disasters that affect millions of people. Communities near oil fields live with contaminated water sources, polluted air, and soil so toxic that nothing edible can grow. Yet these same communities must use these contaminated resources for survival because alternatives simply don't exist. Market conditions in Juba challenge human endurance. Food gets sold in open areas where oil runoff has contaminated the ground. Vendors display meat, fish, and vegetables on surfaces covered with petroleum residue, creating toxic combinations that guarantee illness for consumers. The smell of rotting food mixed with chemical contamination creates an atmosphere that burns the eyes and throat. Number 7. Yemen. Yemen combines active warfare, economic collapse, and complete sanitation system failure to create humanitarian conditions that shocked even experienced aid workers. Sana'a, the capital, has transformed into an urban disaster zone where contaminated water kills more people than bullets. The ongoing civil war destroyed Yemen's already fragile infrastructure, leaving over 20 million people without access to clean water or basic sanitation. Sewage treatment plants stopped functioning years ago, so raw waste flows directly through neighborhoods and into water sources. Families drink from wells contaminated with human waste because alternative water sources simply don't exist. Cholera outbreaks in Yemen have reached epidemic proportions with over 1 million documented cases since 2016. The disease spreads through contaminated water systems and food preparation areas where hygiene has become impossible to maintain. Children make up the majority of victims because their immune systems cannot handle the constant exposure to waterborne pathogens. Food markets operate in conditions that guarantee contamination. Vendors sell whatever edible items they can find, often products that have spoiled or been exposed to sewage during transport.
Number 6. Nigeria. If you thought you'd seen everything, wait until you know what happens on Nigeria's streets and alleys, especially in its most populated city, Lagos. Here, filth isn't just a problem, it's part of the landscape. And believe me, eating on the street can mean facing serious health risks, especially if you're not used to it. Lagos, the country's largest city, stands as one of Africa's most chaotic and overpopulated urban centers. With over 20 million inhabitants, the city grows without control, without basic infrastructure, without decent drainage systems, and with very limited garbage collection. The result? Garbage mountains pile up on streets, channels get blocked and convert into stinking ditches, and food gets prepared right there, in the middle of all that. The most extreme example is Makoko neighborhood, known as the world's largest floating slum. Built over water, Makoko becomes a maze of stilt houses, canoes, and improvised walkways where sewage gets dumped directly into channels and garbage floats between houses and shacks. Here there's no drainage or regular waste collection. Families live over dirty waters where contaminated fish gets caught and then sold right there in floating markets. It's not just about water filth. Makoko becomes a complete sanitary hell. Houses get made with old wood, recycled iron, and even garbage. The floor, when it exists, stays always wet, slippery, covered with black mud and human excrement. There are no bathrooms. Needs get done directly in channels. Children swim between residues, while food stands get built over dirty planks sustained by pieces of rotten wood.
Number 5. Pakistan. Here, filth isn't just on the ground. It's also in the air, in water, and in food. And there's no city where this becomes more evident than in Lahore, which in 2024 got officially classified as the world's most contaminated city. Yes, you read right. Lahore, one of Pakistan's largest cities, literally breathes poison. Air contamination reaches such alarming levels that it's like each inhabitant smokes dozens of cigarettes daily without even bringing one to their mouth. Gray fog covers the sky for weeks, and respiratory diseases already become part of daily life. Children grow up with chronic coughs. Older adults depend on medications, and hospitals collapse in winter when air quality becomes deadly. All this goes hand in hand with an urban scenario invaded by grime, where garbage piles up on every corner. Sewage runs in open air,
and the smell of rottenness mixes with constant noise of honking horns. Channels that once were water sources today become black pits full of plastic, excrement, and chemical products dumped without any control. In cities like Karachi, Lahore, and Rawalpindi, street markets reflect total abandonment. Street food comes cheap, aromatic, but extremely dangerous. Vendors fry samosas, cook kebabs, and serve mango juices in improvised carts surrounded by filth. Many don't even have access to clean water for washing hands or utensils. And water for juices often comes from rusty taps connected to contaminated deposits.
Number 4. Egypt. Egypt stands as one of the world's most visited countries. Millions of tourists travel each year to see majestic pyramids, pharaoh temples, and desert mysteries. But what almost nobody shows is the other side of this historic land, a shocking scenario of garbage, abandonment, and urban chaos. Cairo not only serves as the country's largest city, it's also one of the planet's dirtiest. Garbage accumulates on sidewalks, between cars, in alleys, and corners. Plastic bags, bottles, rubble, and food remains spread through streets without control. The garbage collection system becomes deficient, slow, and practically non-existent in the poorest neighborhoods. In many zones, neighbors simply burn residues in the middle of the street. It's not just about ground garbage. Cairo's air becomes suffocating, covered by a thick fog of dust, smoke from old cars, and burning domestic trash. Breathing there is like inhaling sand mixed with gasoline. On the hottest days, heat makes smells emerge from sewers where drainage runs under open sky. To give you an idea, there exists a place where the panorama seems taken from a nightmare. It's Manshiat Nasser, known as Garbage City. Located in eastern Cairo, this community houses around 60,000 people, most living, breathing, and working among garbage. Practically all domestic garbage from the Egyptian capital gets thrown there, converting the neighborhood into a gigantic inhabited dump.
Number 3. Somalia. Somalia presents a unique contamination disaster where illegal waste dumping meets complete government failure along one of Africa's longest coastlines. Mogadishu exemplifies how international exploitation can transform beautiful coastal regions into toxic wastelands that threaten entire populations. International companies have used Somalia's lawless coastline as a dumping ground for toxic waste since the 1990s. Ships arrive under cover of darkness to dump everything from medical waste to radioactive materials directly onto beaches and into coastal waters. Local communities wake up to find barrels of unknown chemicals washed up on shores where their children play and families fish for survival. The absence of functional government means no environmental protection or waste management systems exist. Mogadishu produces massive amounts of garbage daily, but collection systems collapsed decades ago. Mountains of waste line the coastline, creating barriers between communities and the ocean that should provide food and economic opportunities.
Number 2. Chad. Chad throws you into a reality that feels like stepping into a post-apocalyptic movie set. This landlocked African nation doesn't just deal with poverty, it wrestles with environmental collapse that transforms daily survival into an extreme sport. The capital, N'Djamena, becomes a battleground where humans fight against sand, garbage, and their own waste in temperatures that regularly hit 120 degrees Fahrenheit. Walking through N'Djamena's streets feels like navigating through a giant sandbox filled with human misery. Sand covers everything: food, water containers, cooking surfaces, and people's faces. But this isn't clean desert sand. It gets mixed with animal feces, rotting organic matter, and industrial dust from poorly maintained factories. Street vendors spread their goods directly on this contaminated ground, creating meals that become guaranteed tickets to severe illness. The Chari River, which should provide life to the city, instead delivers death. This waterway receives everything: raw sewage, industrial chemicals, dead animals, and garbage from over 1 million inhabitants. During dry season, the river shrinks, concentrating all this contamination into a thick, toxic soup that still serves as the primary water source for thousands of families. Women walk kilometers carrying plastic containers to fill with this poisoned liquid, knowing they have no alternative. Market scenes in Chad defy belief. Meat hangs uncovered under blazing sun, covered in flies and dust, turning black from exposure and contamination. Fish caught from polluted rivers get sold alongside vegetables grown in contaminated soil.
Number 1. Central African Republic. The Central African Republic exists in a state of permanent crisis that most of the world has forgotten. Bangui, the capital, represents what happens when government completely disappears and society must function without basic services or infrastructure. Here, contamination isn't just an environmental problem, it's a weapon of war used by different factions to control territory and resources. Civil war has destroyed whatever sanitation infrastructure once existed. Garbage collection stopped years ago, leaving neighborhoods buried under accumulated waste that now serves as fortification material for armed groups. Families live in structures built partially from garbage, creating homes that offer no protection from contamination or disease. Food markets in Bangui operate under conditions that defy international health standards. Meat from unknown sources, often hunted illegally from contaminated areas, gets sold alongside vegetables grown in soil poisoned by conflict chemicals. Vendors have no access to clean water for washing products or utensils, so everything gets prepared and sold in states of severe contamination.
Now I have a special recommendation for you. Are you seeing this video that is appearing on the screen? Click on it because I'm sure you'll like it. Well, that's it. And until next time, curious one.